ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meandering, beautiful, but somewhat slow-moving roads of Italy. I am here for a Ferrari trip, and they were nice enough to loan me this Portofino M to drive. And as you do when you're picking a road in an area you don't know, you look at Google Earth and you zoom in and find something really twisty and you go, that looks great. The roads do have a great shape here, but these are the roads that a lot of people use to just get around, which is kind of fitting for this car. You know, this is the Portofino M. This is the Ferrari SL63, or the Ferrari Continental GT, if you will. It is their Grand Tourer, their hardtop convertible, their I just want to be comfortable and cover a lot of ground in style, with some sound, and with a badge that everybody recognizes. So what does the M stand for in Portofino M? It means modificata. They've been using that term since the 70s. That's when they built a couple of 512 TR race cars to compete at Le Mans. They were chasing 917s. They used it again at the end of the Testarossa run to identify some special higher performance 512s, and did the same thing again when the 575 was ending its run as well. And it's the same thing here. The Portofino has been out for a few years. It replaced the California T and the California before that. And with the M, they've given it a little bit of hot rodding, a little bit of performance stuff, and a few new vents to add to the decor on the outside of the car. The engine is the 3.9 liter twin turbo that you get in the Roma. It makes 612 horsepower and 561 pound-feet of torque. It's an increase of about 25 horsepower over the other engine in the regular Portofino. You also get carbon brakes, which feel a lot better under your foot and are pretty easy to modulate, and yet work really well at low speeds. I haven't heard any squeaks. They haven't felt slippery at all. Other hardware, you get an E-diff, which gives you the ability to use the Ferrari's slip angle control, which is pretty trick. You know, keeps you from going off the track, but experiencing a little bit of oversteer if you're one of the 2 people in the world that decides to bring their Portofino to a racetrack. And you also get 2 settings on the money.Porsche switch. You get Race Now and ESC off. So it's the sportier version of their GT car. But the question is, did it ruin it? Did it harden it up too much? Does it make it unbearable? Is it trying to put on the F8 or the Pisa's suit, even though this thing is built more like a lounge chair? I don't think so. I think it's just made it sharper. Makes it easier for you to get from point A to point B because you can place the car a little better, modulate your braking a little better. It's just added a little bit more fun and agility into their 2+2. Wow. The roads here are so strange. This looks 1 lane, but it's 2 lanes. It's not marked. Views are gorgeous. There's bumps, there's turns, there's sudden, like, hairpins. Very good for testing suspension, I imagine. Who needs the Nürburgring when you have this stuff? So I'm in sport mode. Suspension was in sport. And here, where the road's not too broken up, you know, I'm moving around a little bit. I can feel all these little cracks through the seat. I can hear them a little bit. But I don't feel like the car's overly sprung. I don't feel like it's damped too stiffly where I'm just getting bounced around. And now we'll go to bumpy road mode. Immediately you can feel a difference. Immediately the car isn't moving around as much. It actually moves slower instead of, you know, reacting to each bump. It's like it reacts to every 5th bump. The tires are engaging with all of those little undulations and stuff, but the car itself, it's almost more like a boat where it's just kind of gliding over all the smaller waves and following the larger ones. Again, mag ride, amazing. It has given us this wonderful duality of cars where something can be a sporting car and also a comfortable car, also a touring car. I would have no problem covering great distances on the highway in this thing. The visibility is on par with anything else that has an engine in the front. It's not as good as a Porsche Turbo Cab because they don't have an engine in the front, so they can have a more sloping hood. Oh my God. This is like a parade. I've accidentally joined an Italian parade of Skodas and Renaults, and now that I look at it, mostly wagons. So good on them for still buying wagons. And I am right in the middle. I'm not sure what we're all celebrating. I guess Italy did win the semifinal of the Euro Cup last night, so maybe that's what I'm doing. Maybe I'm participating in the Euro Cup celebration right now. There's just a lot fewer balloons than I was expecting. I mean, this would be a great time to test out radar cruise control at 12 miles an hour, which this car does come with. I didn't want to be part of this traffic parade anymore, so I decided to pull over to talk to you about the Ferrari's interior. Now, if you're going to have a GT car, you need to talk about the interior, of course. And this is an interesting one because if you've seen the Roma, either the interior photos of it or our review of it, you know that the interiors for Ferrari is changing a lot. They're using a lot of the haptic buttons, which are very cool looking, but if you so much as gently brush some of them, they'll turn on. Driving the SF90, Matt and I both accidentally turned on the voice control several times by just moving our thumb a little bit.
Cancel! Cancel!
Explain the request, please.
This interior is more traditional Ferrari for the last couple of years. You have this racing steering wheel, which gives you all the controls right on the wheel itself, that I have come to really, really like. Having the blinker controls on the steering wheel is odd at first, but it's very handy. If you suddenly have to change the direction you're going, you want to tell people, the control is right there. It's very convenient. And this also comes with the drift control. It comes with an E-diff, more Manatino settings, and that side slip control that you can get in a lot of the higher performance Ferraris. Pretty cool stuff. We have our bumpy road mode right here. Everything is like a real button, and that's really handy. All of this stuff, all of these controls will look familiar to anyone who's seen the inside of an F458 or 488 or F8. They're using mostly the same stuff, but the good news is that one, I think it looks cool. Two, it works well. The MMI system doesn't look as sophisticated or advanced as something you'd get in an Audi or maybe even a Bentley, but it's clear enough, it works well, the menus are laid out pretty intuitively, and there are redundant hard buttons down here for the climate. So the things that I tend to adjust a lot in a car are the volume on the stereo and the climate control. And both of those have hard controls here, which is really nice. The stitching in here is nice. I like the color tones they've done. It's easy to find all the controls, everything like that. And on the road, it's pretty quiet. I don't know that I'm driving a convertible car because the hardtop does a good job of sealing out the road noise. And then the last bit, an impression of a backseat, a decent impression of a backseat. Dana Carvey doing George Bush impression of a backseat. It has legroom for children or maybe adults if you move the front seats all the way forward. Really, it's just a place to put things, put a backpack or maybe a friend for a really, really short trip if they're hammered and they can't drive home. New EU emissions rules mean it also comes with a particulate filter, which mutes that turbo sound even more than the turbos mute it already. So what you're left with is a car that is a little bit quieter, to be honest, than something like the F8 or the 488 before it. I know, turbo engines don't sound as good as the V12, they never will, but instant torque. Yeah, this pours on the speed real nice, real nice. This is a fire hose of acceleration. Oh, this road has a lot of tunnels, which are pretty nice. Let's try to do a windows down test for you, shall we? Are there any speed cameras in this tunnel? I don't know because I don't speak Italian. Windows back up because it's 95 degrees outside. That's also why the top is up. So you can see, you hear a little bit of that small piston high revving sound, but mostly there's the whistle from the turbos. It's just very muted. If aftermarket parts are allowed in your particular market, you might be able to change the sound of the car. But I think most people that are shopping in this market aren't really interested in making a car that loud. I feel like I'm sitting low in the car, but I actually can place it pretty easily, and I've had to. There's been someone was coming into my lane earlier around a hairpin. There's guardrails I need to avoid while also avoiding oncoming trucks or jagged pavement occasionally. And I've been able to place the car and place the wheels really quickly. A lot of that's the visibility. A lot of it is also due to Ferrari's really quick steering rack. I mean, this helps you maneuver the vehicle really almost effortlessly. That's what I feel like this car is aimed at being. Make things really easy to do without separating you completely from the experience. Look, I mean, this is not a wide road, but I am definitely placing my right side tires right on the edge of the tarmac. And I got comfortable in this car really, really quickly. It feels smaller than it is. From the outside, it looks big. From the inside, it drives like a smaller car. Another cool thing they did is they put the steering wheel in here with the blue lights at the end. So the old cars, your rev counter on the steering wheel would end in red lights. The last 3 or 4 lights were just red, 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 red. And you had to remember, wait, how many red lights before I have to shift? So they took, you know, a little tech from their F1 cars. F1 cars end in a blue light, and they go, hey, when you see the blue, stop revving and shift. All right, there we go. We're gonna get on the autostrada and be able to get a little more speed out of the Portofino. Let's see, down to third. You can't say there's zero turbo lag. There's a little bit, but one, it's not enough to bother you. Two, it's kind of like it builds the anticipation of the arrival of all the power and torque that's about to hit you in the back, and it's fun. It's fun. The new 8-speed transmission replaces the 7-speed that was in the last car. This one is a smaller, lighter unit, again, shared with the Roma. It shifts faster. It's a little bit smoother when you're in automatic mode and it's set to comfort. It does upshift a bit aggressively though. When I had it set into automatic mode, which I'll do now, I was going 42 miles per hour and I was in 7th gear. And right now, same thing, 71 kilometers an hour. I'm in 8th gear now. I'm in 8th gear. Obviously that's all in an effort to save gas and reduce emissions. But you know, if suddenly you want to accelerate, you gotta wait a bit, it's gonna shift, you gotta wait a bit. So it just makes it a little weird to drive around town in automatic mode. I have found it easier to be in manual because going in and out of these roundabouts or away from stoplights and things, I just like knowing what gear I'm in instead of having to wait for the transmission to figure out what's best, how fast I want to accelerate, downshift appropriately, and then carry me forward. Ferrari builds a little bit of drama into their transmissions. You know, the PDK is exceptional. It lands on the exact RPM that's needed when you downshift or upshift so that the car is completely undisturbed. But in the Ferraris, what I've experienced is that there's just a little bit of a hiccup, a little bit of an over rev, or a little bit of the kick in the back. And it has to be programmed in intentionally to give you a little bit more feeling, a little more sensation, because so many cars today are just so smart, so good, that they can remove or add as much feeling as they want to. And we all complain. Enthusiasts complain when the sensations are removed entirely just by the nature of the mechanisms and the technology that's being used. So if they can build more of that back in, I personally want it. It may be imperfect depending on what your measurement of perfect is, but I want a little bit of the drama of driving a car, a performance car, etc. I don't want it to be perfect at every little thing if what I'm looking for is a somewhat compromised sports car anyway. Look, this is going to be a little heavier, a little softer anyway. It's not a track car. If I want that, I'll get an F8 Tributo or a Pista or something like that. And that I want to downshift perfectly if it's set in the correct setting. But this, you know, I'm okay with it moving around a little bit on downshifts or upshifts. I just am. Other things that, you know, could be better that aren't perfect. The seats are soft and I like the foam density, but they're not that adjustable. You do all of the seat adjusting and whatnot through the screen here. It's a touch screen, it reacts quickly. But adjusting the lumbar or the side bolsters, they don't really change size that much. At my size, I've found I would have liked a lot more side bolster support on the thighs and here around the kidneys to hold me in if I was driving really quick. I also really wish I could pull Apple CarPlay over to this left screen. You know, it lets me choose between seeing my speed, the road ahead of me, the trip computer, which mode I'm in, or gauges like boost pressure and oil temp and tire pressure and all those things. But it'd be so handy to be able to pull the Apple CarPlay menu over there and just see what my turn-by-turn directions are instead of having to look down here. So let's talk about the competition. You've got the Porsche Turbo S Cabriolet. Starts about $220,000, so does this car. The difference, though, is this can be optioned over $300,000 really quickly. It's harder, much harder to get a Porsche 911 to cost over $300,000. So you're getting a lot more car for your money from a turbo because you're going to give you just about every option you can imagine for that price. Bentley Continental, you can make those very, very expensive. That's going to give you all-wheel drive. It's also a 2+2. You can get it with a soft top, hard top, etc. And you can get it with the crazy burl wood, all the nice wood interior. This isn't going to have that. This is Ferrari. It's leather, carbon, and a little bit of plastic. That's what you can get in the interior of this car. So the Bentley is going to give you a much richer looking inside. It's going to have that library, old guard, country club aesthetic. To decide, you just have to determine what do you want from the vehicle. I think the Bentley is that sensory deprivation tank, wafting you down the highway, also getting much better at carving corners. The Porsche is an unbelievable machine. Their acceleration is insane. The handling is amazing. The systems work so well. It is the spacecraft of the trio, really. The Ferrari has more attitude. Where the Porsche will be somewhat anonymous because it basically shares the face and body with all of its brethren. You know, from a regular 911 cab to an S to a 4S cab to a turbo, they all look about the same from the outside with very subtle changes or enlarged fenders. You know, most people seeing you go by won't really know the price difference. If you drive by in a Ferrari, everybody knows it's expensive. That's what this car is about. This car is for the person who is done pretending that they're a race car driver or never wanted to pretend to be one in the first place. They've made some money. They just want to have a car that's comfortable, that holds a couple of people and a couple of suitcases and can rip down the highway or maybe on a mountain road occasionally, but tells them something about themselves. It tells them that they've made it, that they did a great job in their professional life, and announces that to the world. When you pull up in this and you pull it into a parking lot, everybody knows the shield, they know the badge, they know the horse, they know it costs a lot of money and that it's probably fast. I think a lot of you are sitting there going, oh, why would you buy this car instead of an F8? Why wouldn't you do this? It's not a true Ferrari, etc., etc. Okay, a couple things. Ferrari has been making front-engine GT cars for a very long time. The Daytona made them very famous. The 400 before that, 550 Maranello, love it. F12, 812, etc., etc. Front-engine Ferraris, it's really where the brand started. Remember, they didn't make a mid-engine road car until they made the Dino, and Enzo was so skeptical about that, about selling it to the public, that they sold it under the Dino name in the beginning. Now, yes, their success almost from then on was mid-engine V8 cars, but I think it's silly to say that this is not a true Ferrari or that a true Ferrari has to be mid-engine or it should be the F8 or the fastest performing thing. They have always had cars that scratched both itches, they've always had cars that scratched one itch or the other. Kind of like a Venn diagram, you know? They had the fast track car, which was a mid-engine, that was their high-performance vehicle. They had the front-engine GT thing. That's what this is. If you think that your Ferrari should be mid-engine and be track-focused and you know, a true sports car, great, buy that one. But they know that there's a market out there that wants a front-engine car that cruises, that can cross great distances comfortably, and that people want to drive around town to look good in. That's who this is for. Well, we're back in town. The roads were not great here, but that's okay because this car is mostly going to be bought by people that want to just drive around their town in something that's nice and sounds pretty good and goes really fast when they get the opportunity. So I want to thank Ferrari for having me out to drive at Fiorano and test their SF90 and the F8 again. And I want to thank them for loaning me this Portofino M. They have not ruined anything about the original one. They've just made all the parts a little bit better. And that's kind of what you want. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We'll see you next time. Oh, torque is great.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.